What's up, everybody? This is the Booch, and welcome to episode 14 of the Boochcast reviews, Darkside of the 90s. And of course, once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am joined by the one, the only, the broke soulless ginger, Mr. Zack Scott.
What's up, dude? Yes, it's me, the broke soul ginger, Zack Scott. Generally speaking, I'm not that broke yet. Today's episode, we're talking about UFC Part Uno.
Yes. This is a special two-parter that Darkside of the 90s is doing, which is interesting because it's been a long time since I've seen a two-parter. These things usually happen on Darkside of the Ring, which is when they did them. Like, for example, they did the two-part episode with Chris Benoit. They did a two-part episode on Brian Pillman. So this is the first time on Darkside of the 90s they've done a two-parter. So this is obviously a big deal. Now, how this is going to work is, here's how it's divided up. Part 1 kind of deals with the formation of the UFC, how it came about, the history, everything. And then Part 2 is more about the legal battles the UFC went through and the trials and tribulations to become the sport as we know it today. So that's kind of how we're going to do this. We'll focus more on the actual formation this week and then try to save some of the legal mumbo-jumbo for next week's show. So this one is called UFC Part 1, No Holds Barred. And of course, Zach, I know you've had some things to say about the UFC in the past.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the UFC. I don't. I just find professional wrestling more entertaining. I will not say that a professional wrestler can go beat the shit out of a UFC guy. No. A couple people. But otherwise than that, I respect the UFC because that's real hand contact sports.
Yeah.
Good God.
With me, the UFC, I have a love-hate relationship with the UFC. I never really liked it in the beginning because, first of all, the pay-per-views are expensive as shit. Tickets are expensive as shit. And I'm just not comfortable dropping $60 on a pay-per-view where the main event fight is the length of an old-school Instagram video. Which, for those you don't know, in the early days of Instagram, when you posted a video, it could only last for 30 seconds. And that's all you got.
True.
Then over time, they upgraded to a minute. Then they came up with the IGTV and just permanently post as long as you want. It just eventually said, fuck it, make the video as long as you want, as long as you're staying on the platform. That's how they feel about it. So, to me, it was just kind of like, most of these fights last about 30 seconds.
True.
And I'm just not that entertained. Like, okay, it's like, it would be like watching a WWE pay-per-view and every match was a squash match. That's basically the UFC. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, the fights are real. Yeah, but they're not really fights. It's just a guy getting knocked the fuck out, and it got to a point where it just wasn't interesting to me. And then what really bugs me the most about the UFC, I don't like their drug testing policy. I think it's a joke. I'm going to tell you why I think it's a joke. Because they drug test these guys like 6-7 times before a goddamn fight. Then you have them go into the octagon. They have the fight, the pay-per-view fight that we've all been waiting for. Fight ends. There's a big triumphant moment. This guy wins. Yay. Then about 3 days after the goddamn fight, we find out, oh, he tested positive for this. So now we're going to take that fight and we're going to strike it from the record books. We're going to take that title away, give it back to the original champion, and we're going to pretend that fight never happened. But we still keep your money from the pay-per-view. To me, that's shady business. So if we're going to make this fight like it never happened, how about we make my wallet look like it never happened? I should get my money back. And I say, well, there were other fights on the card. Yeah, but they weren't on the poster, were they?
Nope.
I'm talking about the poster advertised fight, your main event fight, because that's the thing. People are tuning in for the main event. This isn't like WWE, where nowadays the main event doesn't really matter, because everybody would rather see the undercard fights because they're marks like that. UFC actually has 2 people on the goddamn poster, sometimes maybe 3, 4 tops. That's the fight you're selling. The main event. If the main event flops, your pay-per-view flops. Because unlike professional wrestling, MMA understands that as a form of business.
business.
So to me, this is how I think a drug test should go. The same thing as the weigh-in. You have to cut weight to get into the fight. You need to make the weight. Once you step off that scale, if you wanted to, I wouldn't recommend this, you can go eat 10 pounds of fucking hamburger meat and still get in that goddamn octagon and fight. Mm-hmm. Once you step off that scale, you have made the weight. No matter what you do in the next 24 hours. The drug test, same thing. Zach, you tell me, how long does it usually take to get drug test results back?
Within minutes.
You can do it within minutes?
Yes, with the piss test, you know, right then and there.
Okay, then here's what you do. At the weigh-in. Now, obviously, you can't do this in public, but have a licensed physician escort the guy off stage. Or, if you want to pee a little bit before the conference. Mm-hmm. Before you officially start the press conference, backstage, have those guys piss in a cup. And you have supervisors that can watch this shit to make sure there's no fuckery. Get people who are trusted to do this. Then, while they're up there doing the conference, then you can say, all right, here's the official weigh-in. Did he make the weight? Yes. Perfect. Read his drug test results. The results came back negative for everything. Okay, he can fight. Next guy. And here's the thing. If they're overweight, then it doesn't really matter what the test says either. Nope. They didn't make the weight, they can't fight. Nope. So, okay, he made the weight. What's the test? He tested positive. Well, fight's off. Mm-hmm. This guy's a fucking idiot. Mm-hmm. Now, the fans are going to be pissed off. Yeah, probably. But at least that gives them an opportunity to refund their money. Because I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a hell of a lot worse when you make people spend money only to cancel the whole thing out. I fucking hate that. That's my biggest gripe with the UFC above everything else. It doesn't just happen once. It happens all the time. 90% of the time, after a fight is done, somebody tested positive for a drug and the fight gets stricken off the record books. It's robbery. Find a better way to organize this. Once the fight is over, fight is over. Unless the fucker cheated during the fight, I mean actually like low blow, or you pull a Louis Resto and take the padding out of the gloves, whatever. It's fucking ridiculous. But anyway, other than that, I would actually enjoy the UFC. They just got their shit together with the drug testing. In the 90s, a controversial new sport hits television. America can't look away. Wrestling, kickboxing, boxing and submission holds, all these things wrapped into one fight. But the violence inherent in no-holds-barred combat will leave the UFC in a fight for its own survival. A first glimpse at a sport popular overseas, mixed martial arts or MMA, is a tournament format whereby you can kick, punch, and you can grapple. It incorporates karate, taekwondo, judo, wrestling, and jiu-jitsu. Anything goes, no gloves, no rules. This was UFC before today. Some of you are looking at it like, don't I see them wearing gloves? That came later.
That came later.
Don't they have rules and regulations? That came later.
That came later.
The actual fans love the arm bars and submissions. The casual fans love the mayhem, blood, and guts.
Well, I like both. Don't get me wrong. A bloody fight is a good bloody fight.
But yeah, but it's kind of like, you know, like in pro wrestling. You know, wrestling fans, and even the analysts like us, we enjoy the inner workings of the business and all that other stuff. The casual fans just want to see what we as kids used to want to see. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that's how it is. They want to see the babyface win and the heel lose.
Oh, yes.
They want to see that match. You know, everybody else just wants to see like the promos and everything else. So it's kind of different things. Like the actual like MMA fans love seeing the submission holds and the arm bars because they're into that shit. Yeah. Like I'm a casual UFC guy. I love the mayhem. The blood and guts, it depends. It legitimizes the fighter most definitely. Mm-hmm. But I like the mayhem. I like the fights because it's, to me, I prefer it over boxing because I feel like MMA is more realistic with fights. Yeah. Because in boxing, I can't understand just standing there and only punching somebody. When I'm in a fight, I'm gonna punch, kick, tackle. You do that. To me, that's a fight. Like, I like boxing matches, but I don't like the fact that boxing is called the fights. With its intoxicating mix of fighting styles and a roster packed with steely-eyed competitors, the early UFC is a far cry from the predetermined matches and scripted characters seen in professional wrestling. Now, before I go any further with this, I want to give a special shout out to Mark McGrath, the narrator of Darkside the 90's. Because I don't know if this was written out for you or if you had to write these yourself, but I want to be the first to commend you for how you described that. Predetermined matches, scripted characters. And when he talks about, and I'll give him credit, whether it's part 1 or part 2, whenever he talks about wrestling, because it's going to be a topic throughout this whole thing eventually, he never once used the word fake to describe wrestling. Never once.
Not once.
Not one time.
Not once.
And I am so grateful for that.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm always scared. Whenever somebody who's not in wrestling or is not talking about something related to wrestling, they tend to throw the word fake out a lot. And fake is the most offensive thing you can say about wrestling. Wrestlers take the word fake very seriously. Now, if you say it in WWE, nothing really bad's going to happen to you. But only because they're a publicly traded company. So they have to contain their anger. But if you go to an indie show, local show in your area, and say the word fake, you ain't making it out of that building alive. Either the fans are going to kill you, or the talent is going to kill you. I have been in situations where I have had to save fans from getting the fuck beat out of them. I knew a kid once who said the word fake and wasn't even trying to be mean. He was actually paying a compliment. I was at an indie show, we were packing everything up, getting on the truck, getting ready to leave, and this guy came up and said, "Hey man, I just wanted to tell you, I really love the show today." I said, "Thank you, man, I appreciate it. We do the best we can." He goes, "Dude, I love wrestling. I've been a fan my whole life. I love it. I've grown up watching it. These guys, what they do in the ring is incredible." He goes, "Dude, I don't care that it's fake. It's a great show." Now, again, his heart was in the right place.
But you said the wrong thing.
Now, a wrestler was next to me going, "Oh yeah, it's fake." And I saw the look on his face like he was going to kill him. But he had a bunch of shit in his hand. So I just kind of looked over at him and said, I got this. So I backed him down. I then put my arm over his shoulder and I escorted the young lad away from the danger zone and told him, "Look, I appreciate everything you just said, but don't ever say the word fake again."
Nope.
He's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Dude, look, I understand you didn't mean that in a bad way, but if that guy didn't have a container in his hand, he'd have ripped your head off for saying that. Wrestlers do not like to hear the word fake. You say scripted. Scripted. That's the best way. Scripted, predetermined, say all that. Yes. Do not say fake." And he said, "Oh, thank you, man." And then he left. Because that wrestler would have tore his head off. Fake is so offensive. And the reason it's so offensive is because of this. When you say the word fake, you're implying that anyone can do it. That you could step in a ring and easily do it because it's fake. No, you can't. Most y'all wouldn't last one day in a wrestling school. Okay? I promise you that. Also, here's another reason why I don't like it. Because you're implying that the pain they feel isn't real. And the injuries they sustain are not real. And the accidents and deaths that have happened in the ring are not real. That's why they don't like the word fake. Because it implies all of that, whether you mean to or not. That's what you're implying.
Very true.
So never use the word fake to describe wrestling to anyone.
Anyone.
You scripted or predetermined. Never say fake. If you say fake around a wrestler, they're going to kill you.
Yes.
I'm not even a wrestler. I'm just an announcer and a manager in the business. I've had people say fake around me, and I've damn near wanted to kill them. Even before I got in the business, I've damn near cussed out and knocked out people for saying the word fake. So, Mark McGrath, I commend you, sir, for not using the word fake, doing the right thing by the business. Thank you. And it bears no resemblance to the glitz and glamour of professional boxing. Exactly, because they actually fucking throw down. This is not even the UFC that you know today. that we're talking about. This is an anything goes, unregulated, unsanctioned free-for-all that attracts fighters from around the world to a series of cage matches where anything can happen. Literally fucking anything. UFC in the 90s sold the blood, the violence. It was a major part of it, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole story of how the UFC grew to become a multi-billion-dollar sports franchise begins with a 46-year-old salesman in California who makes a living hustling everything from office machines to health club memberships. He was a classic entrepreneur. He even owned a car dealership in San Diego where he did his own stunts and commercials. From being thrown 25 feet in the air to jumping off a 10-story building to being set on fire to dangling from a helicopter to being shot with a .357 Magnum. He also burned out selling things that others made, ready to create something for himself. That man's name was Art Davie. And he created UFC.
Yes, he did.
Yes.
He did.
So, for anybody out there, any youngins out there who think that this was founded by Dana White, it wasn't. And you know what? Mm-hmm. I didn't know the history of the UFC, so I was dumb enough to believe that Dana White was the founder of the UFC. When I found out it was this guy, Art Davie, I was like, oh, shit.
Boy, was I wrong.
I didn't know nothing about UFC. That's how you know I know nothing about the UFC. Having trained as a boxer in his youth, Davie is fascinated by the huge array of fighting styles from around the world. During the 1980s in martial arts magazines, there were articles about who would win in a contest in between different martial arts styles. Like, who would win between a boxer and a sumo wrestler, with kung fu versus karate. They're kind of like the dream matches we would see in wrestling.
Yeah.
You know, hey, who would win between Hogan and Cena? Who would win between Austin and Goldberg? Like, those kind of fantasy matchups that you would see.
Brock Lesnar, Scott Steiner.
Oh, that would be a fight.
No, that would be a brutal fight.
I'll tell you this, though. You could not air the promos on regular TV.
No.
They'd have to cut promos at pay-per-views leading up just so they can get away with shit.
Or just one more Roddy Piper against MJF in a mic battle.
Oh my god. Oh my god. That would be so hilarious.
Yeah, it's so controversial to see it on TV. Like,
Oh yeah, because Roddy Piper was controversy.
Oh my god. Also about the coconut.
The coconut.
One coconut.
Two coconuts. It's
three
bad.
coconuts. I was like, God damn it, Rowdy. I was like,
this guy is. He had no fucks to give.
No, he had no filter.
Yeah. So he decided to put it together in a tournament format. So that's what he basically going to do. I'm going to take all these fighting styles and we're going to put them all in one show. And let's see if those fantasy matchups can become reality.
Yes.
He got inspired by reading an article on Rory and Gracie in a national magazine. He was a member of the Gracie family, which was a family of martial artists from Brazil who innovated a particularly modern style of martial arts. They called it Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Yes. The statement the Gracie family was trying to make was that Gracie Jiu-Jitsu could defeat anyone regardless of size. Whether you were smaller than them, taller than them, the same height as them, with this fighting style, we can whoop your ass. Rory learned jiu-jitsu from his father, and when he immigrated to America, he told the martial arts magazines that he was ready to issue the Gracie Challenge. Anyone of any style of martial arts could come and challenge him, and he guaranteed victory and was able to defeat almost every style. Just beat everybody. The Gracie Challenge is the clash of competing fighting styles that Davie has been dreaming about. Who better to partner with than the famous family of fighters? Davie ended up working down the street from their academy, so he went there and presented to them the idea. So he pitches the UFC concept. They didn't have a name for it yet. To promote the supremacy of this family's fighting style, Gracie agrees to partner up on an MMA tournament if Davie can overcome the state laws and athletics commission rules that would prohibit this kind of fighting event. Because this is why there was controversy in the UFC. Because athletic commissions would not sanction this type of tournament in any way, shape, or form. And also, they would put rules and regulations that would defeat the purpose of their no-holds-barred strategy. Davey discovered that the state of Colorado has a loophole in the law that will allow them to do a bare-knuckle tournament. So he goes to Colorado and gets a limited liability company for Rory and himself called Wild Promotions. War of the Worlds. All they had to do was raise the money and find someone to air the events on TV. They got turned down by HBO, Showtime, and ESPN. They thought he was crazy. But in 1993, the television landscape in America is going through a transformation. Newly launched communications satellites make up to 150 channels available to homes across the country. It also opens the way for pay-per-view events where audiences pony up a one-time fee to see live events at home on TV. Davey is hoping his War of the Worlds will be one of them. And yes, this, of course, for ladies and gentlemen, for those you don't know, is the birth of DirecTV. Satellite dishes.
Yep.
You got a satellite?
I have satellite.
We got one. And here's the funny part. The only reason my dad got a satellite...
Football.
Yeah. He found... Well, not just football. He found out that Georgia, on regular TV, doesn't play the Giants games. And that was unacceptable. Unacceptable! And keep in mind, this is before the NFL Sunday Ticket. That didn't happen yet. So, my dad got a satellite dish so he can get the Giants games. But then he found out, I have access to all the games. I'll never leave my couch again. And every Sunday, glued to that motherfucker. Once he sat down to watch football, you didn't hear from him for the rest of the day. And here's the funny thing about me discovering pay-per-view. The first two things I ever saw on pay-per-view, Beavis and Butthead Do America, and Anaconda.
Oh.
That was my... Oh, no, actually, no, there was one more.
What?
Scream.
Oh, okay.
The first Scream.
Yeah, the first Scream.
So it was the first Scream I saw.
There's two.
Then there was Anaconda. Then there was Beavis and Butthead Do America.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen Beavis and Butthead in forever, and we were finally at an age where our mom would let us watch Beavis and Butthead. Because before that, we had to, like, hide out to watch Beavis and Butthead, which we talked about on MTV.
Yep.
So DirecTV became a thing. Like, now you have 150 channels. And back then, 150 channels was like, whoa. Like, that was mesmerizing to us.
Yes.
For a lot of you youngins out there, this ain't news for you. Y'all are so used to streaming, you don't even know. You don't even know how crazy you went from, like, a couple basic cable shows to now you can watch all of TV. All of it. It was insanity.
It was insane.
They had to make shit up just to fill up the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
There were literally channels you would click on and it would just play music. Not even... I'm not talking about MTV where they had music videos. I'm talking like music, like audio. That's it. Yeah. You'd have a screen that would just show nothing and then you would just hear songs.
Yeah, that's true. I remember the music.
Oh, God, it was crazy. He finds a company in New York called Semaphore Entertainment Group. At the time, they mostly did music and comedy on pay-per-view. Like the Judd's Farewell Tour and Andrew Dice Clay, No Apologies. But they didn't have a franchise. And he knew that young men in North America and eventually all over the world will pay to see this. And oh boy, do they.
Yeah, they pay.
Oh, they pay.
They pay.
See, me, I go to Hooters, but other people, they pay. Semaphore's executive Bob Meyerowitz is intrigued by the idea and agrees to a 50-50 partnership with War of the Worlds Productions, joining Davey as one of the UFC's co-creators. In fact, it was Michael Abramson from Semaphore who felt it should be changed to the Ultimate Fighting Championship because War of the Worlds sounds like a movie, and this isn't a movie, this is real life. Because if, like the movie War of the Worlds, they said, these are fighters, this is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. And they went, oh, fuck, that's good. So that's how the UFC got its name.
Yep.
The title sticks, and with funding secured, Davey and his creative team are eager to heighten the drama of the competition by creating a fighting platform perfectly suited for the UFC's unique style of combat. This leads to the creation of the Octagon.
Of the Octagon.
To the point where people say the Octagon, they automatically know which Octagon you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. There's an Octagon that tells people when to stop. That's not the Octagon.
No.
But Davey still needs fighters courageous enough or crazy enough to enter this Octagon and defeat 3 different opponents to be declared champion. His plan is for an 8-man tournament, and he asks Rorion if one of his brothers can compete against 3 different fighters in one night. He immediately offers up his younger brother, Royce Gracie. This is one of the all-time UFC legends here. Now, Royce Gracie is a skilled master of the family's Brazilian fighting style, jiu-jitsu. He was chosen because of his size, not speed and strength, because his size would prove the effectiveness of their family fighting style. So he wasn't the fastest, he wasn't the strongest.
No.
But because he was short, it was good PR.
Very good PR.
Soon, other contenders like sumo wrestler Tyler Tooley and boxer Art Jimerson are added to the card. Yeah. Now we got our boxer and our sumo guy.
Yeah.
But Davey is still looking for the face of his new sport. What he finds is a powerful and explosive fighter whose rivalry with Royce Gracie will come to define the UFC and be its first major draw.
And who would that be?
We're about to tell you.
Oh, I wonder who that is.
But before we tell you that, we have to kind of take some strolls down memory lane. Maybe give a little origin story. In July of 1976, America's most famous athlete, boxer Muhammad Ali, agrees to fight Japanese wrestler Antonio Inoki in a highly publicized event. It's an unusual matchup that brings together 2 fighters from widely different disciplines and one that anticipates the birth of mixed martial arts. Despite a handful of explosive moments, Inoki spends most of the 15 rounds on his back, with Ali standing over him barely able to throw a punch. The fight was ultimately declared a draw and dismissed as a bizarre one-off. So that was kind of the sad part of that. They hyped up this fight and didn't really deliver. Now, obviously, you all know who Muhammad Ali is. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, rumble young man, rumble. You know, ain't no Viet Cong ever called me. Well, you know. So, you know who he is. Antonio Inoki. For those of you who may not know. Now, there is a video on our Dark Side of the Ring playlist called Collision in Korea.
Yep.
It features myself, Gator Ricky Ross, and our former NXT correspondent, Mr. John Tumblin. The Collision in Korea, Antonio Inoki was a big part of that because he ran New Japan Pro Wrestling, which at the time, which merged with the WCW for this one-time event in Korea.
Yes.
And the main event was Antonio Inoki against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Originally, it was supposed to be Antonio Inoki versus Hulk Hogan. But Hogan's like, I'm not fucking going to Korea. Hogan was like, fuck that.
Want to go to North Korea? No, you have fun.
Yeah. So Ric Flair was the alternate, which he did not like hearing that.
Of course not. It's Ric Flair.
Yeah. Like, you went to Hogan first? Yeah, he's a bigger name. Sorry to disappoint you, Nate. So he ran New Japan Pro Wrestling. He was a big deal in Japan. Like, he was literally well-respected man in Japan. And ran the top promotion. Because New Japan Pro Wrestling was like the WWE here. Back then. This is back when New Japan Pro Wrestling was actually an organization that you could respect. When they actually respected wrestling. And took it seriously. And knew how to work in a wrestling ring. It didn't do the bullshit they do today. New Japan used to respect the business. Now it prostitutes it.
Pretty much.
But anyway, in the 90s, 46-year-old Art Davey is poised to bring mixed martial arts back to the mainstream with his Ultimate Fighting Championship. Most of the fighters for the 8-man tournament have been chosen, but Davey isn't satisfied. Davey believed this is show business, and he not only wanted to have the best fighters, he wanted the most entertaining fighters as well. Because again, it's show business. You know, hey, we need a guy with showmanship. We need some entertainment here. Because don't get it twisted. Anybody on TV is entertainment. That's why certain athletes get a lot of attention. Because they know how to work the crowd.
Yes, they do.
You know, Whether it's to entertain people or whether they piss you the fuck off. The ones that are making the most noise get the most attention because they know you're going to click to watch.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get these people to watch? That's why they have singers in halftime shows. Watch. 5,000 miles away in Tokyo, Japan, a young grappler from the U.S. is making a name for himself as a mixed martial arts champion. That man was Ken Shamrock. WWE fans, we all know Ken Shamrock. Die-hard UFC fans, you know Ken Shamrock. Before he was any of those things, he was just making a name for himself grappling in Japan.
Yes.
Now, born Ken Kilpatrick, that's his birth name. Or as Gator would say, that's his Christian name.
Yeah, he's Christian.
He was born Ken Kilpatrick in 1964 in Macon, Georgia.
Which I did not know he was from.
I didn't know he was from Macon.
I didn't know he was from Macon.
I didn't know he was a Georgia boy. Back, the future fighter, his two brothers, and their single mom live in extreme poverty. They slept in one room with no bed, and sometimes they didn't even have food. He had to steal food out of garbage cans. He doesn't remember ever being hugged by his mother and never knew his father. So that's the early days of Ken Shamrock growing up.
Yeah.
So, before you judge the man, understand where he came from.
Yeah, true.
This is a man who ate food out of garbage cans when he was a kid. He had a house, but they couldn't afford food. They could just afford the house.
True.
Barely. After his family moves to Napa, California, 10-year-old Ken runs away from home. Mm-hmm. He starts hanging out with bad people and survives by stealing and robbing. So this is where Ken kind of has a checkered past.
True.
And is not exactly a model human being.
Nope.
And he's led the kind of life where you either lay down and die or you stand up and fight. Here's the thing. When you live on the streets, that's how it is.
Pretty much.
Because the streets are not your friend.
Nope.
Okay? This is why a lot of people grow up tough and crazy. Because you're around people who are tough and fucking crazy. Because everyone fights to survive.
Very true.
One fateful day, Ken has to fight for his life. Some other kids come walking up that weren't from his neighborhood. Words are said and fists are thrown. Ken had a knife on him and he tries to stab someone. And instead, he ends up getting stabbed himself. He passed out from loss of blood and woke up in a hospital, handcuffed to the bed. Which is kind of weird. You're blacking out from getting stabbed, you wake up, you're in a hospital bed, and you're handcuffed. You're like, what the fuck am I? Mm-hmm. Your first thought's got to be, oh God, they took me to a lair and held me hostage. The cops have been looking for him for a while, and he becomes a ward of the court. Then at the age of 14, he meets the man who will give him his last name and a glimpse at a better life. The man's name was Bob Shamrock, and he dedicated his life to helping at-risk kids. So, this is where Ken's life can turn around.
Yep.
Because basically, he becomes a ward of the court. I don't know whatever the fuck that means.
The state takes over when the parents can't take care of the kid anymore.
Bob lived in a mansion that was a boys' home that had 18 boys living there. Bob brings Ken to the home and shows him a bar that has soda, candy, and ice cream. Okay.
Where are you going with it?
Now,
I thought the same thing.
I'm going to say this right now before I go any further. I know Bob Shamrock's heart is in the right place. And I'm sure back then, you could do shit like this and it's okay. But, doesn't this kind of scream home of a pedophile?
Pretty much.
I'm just saying, he's not one. No. Let me emphasize this for the record. Bob Shamrock was a good man who took care of these boys. His heart was in the right place. He took care of them. He helped raise them, grow them up to be men. Never once did anything perverted with any of them. Never happened.
Never happened.
I'm just saying, from the perception, this sounds like something a pedophile would do to get kids into his house. Okay? He obviously wasn't one. But my first thought was, okay, none of y'all thought this was shifty at all. Then again, it was like, what, the 60s, 70s?
70s.
You know, I think like this, maybe the 70s, maybe the late 80s. I don't fucking know. It was a time where you could have shit like this and nobody thought that. Mm-hmm. Today, if you did something like this, their immediate thought would go, he's touching little boys. Today, people would do that. And by that, I mean today they would assume you're doing that. Not that you would actually do that.
Yeah, true.
And even Ken was kind of like, this is weird. This is unheard of. Like, you gotta understand something for at-risk kids when they're like this. When you pull kids off the street and you give them a nice place to stay, it's not that they are not appreciative. It's that they're trying to think, what's the angle? Mm-hmm. You're not going to get their trust by putting them up in a nice place and giving them fancy things. It's just not going to happen.
Nope.
That you have to earn that trust from them still. Because they're used to places where people lure you into a false sense of security, and that's when they fuck you. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean like literally fucking, I mean like metaphorically as well. They're always shifty about that shit. Like, so he's kind of like, okay, this is cool. Mm-hmm. But let's see where this goes. Yeah. He's kind of keeping a level head, which is what you should do. He offers Ken a fresh start, and he notices that Ken is violent and fights all the time. So he helps him vent that frustration into something positive. And that's what I like about Bob. Mm-hmm. And this is what I think you should do. If you're going to take care of at-risk kids, instead of telling them, you know, hey, let your anger go. You know, let it go. Get rid of it. You don't need to be angry. Fuck you. Seriously. Why do people think that's a smart idea? When people are in shitty lives or shitty environments, they can't just let it go. It ain't that simple. Now, as time goes by, they can let it go. And there's going to come a time where they're going to need to let it go. Like, if you're holding on to that grudge, it's like 30 years. It's like, what are you, like 32 now? Let the shit from childhood go. At some point, there's going to come that time. But it's not going to happen right away. You're going to go through a trial period. And if you're not willing to go through that trial period, don't fucking help at-risk kids. So he said, you know what? I'm not going to tell you to stop fighting. I'm not going to tell you to stop being angry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to channel it. I'm going to help you control it and help you focus it into something that will make you successful. That's what you do. Whatever that person's problem is, channel it and put it towards something positive. That way they don't have to get rid of it. They can just find a better way to use it. Like, hey, let's say somebody's known for being good with numbers and ripping people off, but they used to rip people off with money. All right, you're good with numbers. Let's take that ability you're using here to steal, and instead let's use it, channel it something else. Mathematics. Accounting. You could be a good accountant. You're good with money. You're good with numbers. Be an accountant. Mm-hmm. You know how many people need an accountant?
A lot.
And will pay you good money so you don't have to steal from them?
True.
A lot. Accountants can make good money.
Yes,
do that. That's what you do. Channel it into something that will make it work. So Bob Shamrock enrolls Ken in the local high school. And it's on the football and wrestling teams that Ken discovers a place where violence is rewarded. So that's what they did. We're going to try you out for the football team. Why? So you can get in those pads and tackle motherfuckers. Take that anger. But then you got to use to control it so you don't beat the fuck out of people. So as long as you stay within the rules, you can knock motherfuckers out. Just don't break the rules.
True.
Wrestling is great for anger and aggression. Oh my God. The angrier you are, the more aggressive you are, boom, take them motherfuckers down.
Very true.
Bob taught Ken the rules of sports and life. Until if he plays within those rules, he can be successful in anything he wants to be. Exactly like I said. Just play within these rules, and you can have everything you want in life.
True.
He forms a father-son bond with Bob, and although he still loves his mom, he knew it would be too toxic to go back there, so he stays with Bob, who formally adopts him in 1982. And that's got to be a tough decision to make for Ken. Like, there's nothing worse than if you love somebody, whether it's a mom, a dad, a sibling, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, a child, whatever it is. There's nothing worse than having love for someone, but also knowing that being around them is toxic.
True.
And is not conducive to what you're trying to do. So, like you said, he loved his mother. Mm-hmm. But he also knew, I can't go back with her. I can't go back to that life.
You're true.
It's like she has to get her shit together before I can interact, and that's why he decided to stay with Bob. Mm. Now, they never mentioned if Ken ever reconnected with his mom ever again.
They didn't say that at all.
And I'll be honest, if I ever get a chance to interview Ken Shamrock, that is going to be a question I'm going to have on the list. Like, did you ever see your mother again? Were you ever able to bury the hatchet? Did she ever get a chance to become a not-so-toxic part of your life?
True.
And if she did, she did. And if she didn't, okay. I'll accept either answer. It's not my life. But it's something I'm curious about. In his final year of high school, Shamrock is definitely getting noticed on the football field. But he's becoming disenchanted with the sport. He decided he didn't want to play football anymore and decides to go into pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. And that's another tough decision to make. When you're getting noticed for football and you might have some scholarships thrown your way, but you realize you're not enjoying the sport anymore.
Yeah, I hear you.
That's another awkward moment.
Yeah, true.
Because for a lot of kids, especially with kids with Ken Shamrock's problems, sports are their way to get to college.
True.
That's why they value it so much. Like, parents want to see their kids get athletic scholarships. See, the athlete wants the scholarship because all he's thinking is, I'm going to play in the NFL, I'm going to play in the NBA. Mm-hmm. All the mom's thinking is, he's getting a degree. Mm-hmm. If I had a son that had a football scholarship, I'll say this right now. If he makes it to the NFL, I am all for that. Mm-hmm. And I would even tell him, go for the NFL. But take the classes seriously. That would be my rule to my son. Like, you know, hey, if you make it to the NFL, great. Take the money. Mm-hmm. Take the money. Have the career. Please don't play for the Raiders. Look, I don't like the Raiders, but if my son gets a $10 million contract to play for the Raiders, guess what? I become a Raiders fan.
What if he got signed to the Patriots?
Again, if he's making millions of dollars, I'm going to tell him, look, buy daddy a house. I will send Bill Belichick a fruit basket, okay? So he goes into pro wrestling. Now, keep in mind, when he goes into pro wrestling, he's not in the WWE yet.
No.
He's working the indie circuit. This is him on the indies now. And he works under stage names like Vince Torelli and Mr. Wrestling. Huh. Shamrock becomes an expert in a pro wrestling style of choreographed combat. Again, not using the word fake. Now he goes into choreographed combat. This again is what I like. We're avoiding the word fake. Me likey. But he eventually tires of pulling his punches. Now he's realizing he's getting tired of having to throw working punches. Because that's what you learn when you're in wrestling. Because in the beginning, you're fighting for your life because they're breaking you in. But once they realize you have the potential to make it, that's when they would smarten you up. And tell you, hey, we don't really try to kill each other out there. Now we're going to teach you how to pull your punches, how to throw a working punch so it looks real, but doesn't cause, damage to somebody's head.
True.
While talking to his friend Dean Malenko, this is another big name in wrestling. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dean Malenko was not a big-time main event player.
No.
But he is one of the best technical wrestlers in the history of the game. He was known for being in the Four Horsemen in WCW. Now, he wasn't an original Horseman member. This was when they tried to reform the Horsemen in the 90s, and it was Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, Ric Flair, and Arn Anderson. So, Dean Malenko was in there for a while. Before that, he and Chris Benoit feuded a lot, and he was also friends with Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Chris Jericho. They were kind of a four-man group when they used to travel in Mexico together and stuff. They were in Mexico and Japan. Like, Dean and Chris would stay in one room, Eddie and Jericho would stay in the other room. So, Dean Malenko's been around for years. I think he's current. I know he's a producer now, but I can't remember if he's a producer for WWE or AEW. I can't remember which one he went to.
I think it's WWE.
Last time I checked, I think he was in AEW.
I don't know.
I think it's AEW. Maybe he went back to WWE. I don't know. But Dean Malenko was a guy you took seriously. His finisher was the Texas Cloverleaf submission hold. So he's very well known for that. So he shows him a tape of Japan's Universal Wrestling Federation, and he becomes hooked. Yeah. Now, in the early 90s, Japan's Universal Wrestling Federation was pioneering a new, more aggressive style of pro wrestling, where fighters often incorporate elements of martial arts in the ring.
Yeah.
Because Japan liked to do innovative stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that Japan does that's innovative that America adapts over time. Yeah. American wrestling. Because they wanted to make the wrestling look more real in Japan. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more violent, and it's a lot more... Some of it's more entertainment based, but it's also like, hey, Japan let you know you're tough. Mm-hmm. Now, Shamrock is invited to join the organization's roster of fighters. It's the beginning of his career as a so-called shoot fighter, where the fighting inside the ring is unscripted and unplanned up to a certain point.
Yes.
Now that's shoot fighting. Shoot in wrestling means this was not planned. This is really happening. Like, you ever see two guys argue and they go, "Oh, they shooting." That means it's not scripted. They're fitting to kill each other. And sometimes it's hard to tell. But as I remember one time, Buff and I were at a show, and a guy was yelling at Buff as he walked up the ramp, and Buff looked at him and said, "Are we shooting? Are we shooting?" And the guy said, "Yeah." Buff's like, okay. Now, he's on a crutch, so he didn't chase him down. But at that moment, we were like, "Gonna be a problem later?"
Uh-oh.
Thankfully, it wasn't.
Yeah, I hear you.
But yeah, apparently he claimed Buff hit him with the chair too hard. Fucking baby. Now, the certain point is the predetermined finishes. Because that's the thing about wrestling that makes everyone go, "Oh, this is all fake." The fact that the finishes are predetermined.
Yes. When the two wrestlers, and it doesn't matter what organization it is, by the way, whatever 3 letters you want to put up there, they all have one common denominator. Their finishes are predetermined. Yes. When they walk out to the ring, they know in advance who's going to win, who's going to lose. Mm-hmm. Now, what happens in the ring is different. All they get mostly, that's what old school wrestling was. You got to finish, and then the rest you had to figure out. So it's like, all right, it's okay. Zach, you and Johnny over there. Y'all going to go out there. You're going to do 10 minutes. Johnny's ass going to hit you with the stunner. He's going to get you 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, the rest of the match, y'all go figure that out. Then it's going to be up to you two to go, whether you want to just call it in the ring, or if you go backstage and say, all right, I'm going to throw this clothesline. You're going to duck it, bounce off, hit with a flying forearm. I'm going to roll out of the ring. Then you're gonna go for a dive. I'm gonna catch you and hit a DDT on the floor. Then we're gonna do, like, you would figure all that shit out. Yes. But whatever you did, whatever you came up with, it had to lead to you stunner 1, 2, 3. Yep. Now Ken was getting tired of the predetermined finishes and wanted the real deal. 1993, Shamrock joins Japan's Pancrase hybrid wrestling, which promotes real hand-to-hand combat. So this is all full-on shoot. Yeah. Right here. Not even predetermined finishes. Everything's full-on shoot. That same year, Shamrock becomes the first King of Pancrase openweight champion. So Ken, legit for a shoot, won this title. That's how badass this motherfucker is. When you win shoot fights in wrestling, you're tough. Yes, you are. You are very tough. Davey saw him as Captain America. At 6'1", 212 pounds, with a bodybuilder's body, and he competes in red Speedos. Ken told him what he does is the real deal. But Davey said, no, what I'm doing is the real deal. Because there's no rules, and anything goes. Ken doubts that will happen, but believes as a champion, he has to defend his title. So he's like, all right, I don't really think this guy's going to get this done. But if he does, I'm in. Put me in. Yep. I'll show all these motherfuckers who the swinging dick motherfucker is. Days before the event, the 8 elite fighters chosen for the UFC's inaugural tournament begin arriving in Denver. Ken sees a press conference and is confident he can win. But after the press conference, the fighters are surprised to be called into a meeting to discuss the rules of the tournament. They're like, I'm sorry, come again? What rules? There are
rules?
No rules.
You said there's no rules, anything goes. What this shit? What rules? What? They didn't say rules. Did they tell you there's gonna be rules? No. They didn't tell me there's gonna be rules. No rules. They tell you there's gonna be rules?
No rules.
What the fuck is this shit? There was only 3 rules for the fight. No no groin shots, no biting, and no eye gouging. Those are reasonable, I guess.
Yeah, they are reasonable.
I think. I mean, the groin shot makes sense because that'll end the fight quickly. You know, biting, you don't really need to do that in a fight. To me, biting in a fight is when you're like in desperado mode and you don't know what to do.
Yep.
You bite when you're scared.
Yes.
No eye gouging. Again, that's if the only time you usually see eye gouging is if someone's like choking them and you eye gouge to get the motherfucker to stop choking you.
Yeah.
The fight could end by you throw in the towel, you get knocked out, or you die. That's it. Those are the only ways you lose. Is the corner man throws in the towel, it's over. It's over. And they wanted all the fighters to sign on for the rules. Rorian was there to talk to the fighters and tells the kickers and punchers they can't wrap their fists. The reason is because you wouldn't do that in a fight on the streets. You wouldn't have time. What? Okay. First of all, they have time to go out to that octagon, and you just said anything goes, they can wrap their hands. Also, if this is a real fight on the streets, if we're going to treat this like it's a real fight on the streets, you need to cut out those other 3 rules.
Yes.
Because I don't give a fuck what nobody says. If we're in a street fight, unsanctioned street fight, either I beat you or you beat me or one of us has to die, if you think for 1 second I'm not going for a groin shot, or I ain't fitting to bite your ass, or I ain't fitting to fish hook your fucking eye out of its socket, get out of your fucking mind. You've never been in a street fight. In a street fight, you gotta do whatever you gotta do to win. See, these type of rules are for sanctioned fights. Unless they're the rules you agree upon in advance with a street fight. You know, like in Anchorman when they were all going to fight, he goes, no touching of the hair or face. And they go, of course. And then they fight.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 rules. But if you don't establish any ground rules, anything goes. If this is a real fight, those 3 things are happening. All right? Yes. I don't know what real fights you got in, but you're going for the get me the fuck out of here scenario.
Yes.
That doesn't appeal to Zane Frazier, who's a kickboxer, and Art Jimison, who's a professional boxer. Both are now arguing that they need to be able to wrap their hands. Shamrock is also given a handicap by the organizers. They took away his wrestling shoes, which is the ultimate foundation for wrestlers. Yes, it is. Yeah, wrestlers don't wrestle barefoot.
No.
We don't. They got standard wrestling shoes. In fact, you have to go out and buy them. I had to go out and buy my wrestling shoes when I started wrestling. And they had them set up. We even have rules where where after you tie them, the laces have to be taped. You had to get masking medicine tape. Not Scotch tape, like those actual medicine tape you use to wrap gauze.
Yeah. And
you would wrap your shoelaces so the shoelaces didn't come untied during the match.
Yeah.
You had to literally tape your laces. The room is now turning into chaos, and Davey worries that the fire are going into the hospital, jail, and the event is going to be canceled. Well, no shit, motherfucker. You sprung this on them when they got here. If you wanted these rules established, you do that before they fly to fucking Denver. You idiot. These guys are coming in here, preparing themselves, and are training for a no-holds-barred, anything goes, I can do whatever the fuck I want to do fight. And then right before the fight, you're telling them, okay, now we can't do any of these things. Like, blow me. If you want rules set up, you tell them in advance. It's like when I host the Boochfest comedy shows. The bar had rules for certain things comics can't talk about. Those 3 rules were no current politics. You can talk about Bush or Clinton or Ronald Reagan or whatever, but we couldn't do jokes about Herschel Walker or fucking Raphael Warnock or Stacey Abrams or Brian Kemp. We couldn't do jokes about race because it caused audience members to get up and leave. And no sex jokes involving body parts. Like, you can talk about sex, but don't say, oh, I like a massive big cock, or I'm gonna get some pussy, or I'm gonna drill that bitch in the ass all day long. She got a big old ass. Like, you can't do that.
No, you can't.
I let the comics know up front. These are the rules. They're not my rules. They're the bar rules. So these are the rules you have to follow if you want stage time at this show. And then they make the decision. I can accept that, Vinny. I'll be more than happy to perform. And others say, fuck you, thought police. You're not going to censor my art. All right, fine. Keep working open mics till you die. I don't tell you. But yeah, the night before the Ultimate Fighting Championship's first match, fighters are in fierce disagreement over the last-minute addition of new rules and regulations. UFC Art Davie is worried the tournament is in jeopardy. The sumo wrestler ends up saving the tournament. He slams the release form on the podium and says, I've already signed it, and I'll see everyone else in the tournament, and leaves. It took the wind out of everyone's sails, because now they all look like pussies if they walk away. That's pretty much it. The sumo guy's like, you know what? Fuck it. I don't care. I'm in. So I'm going to fight. Yes. Any of you guys want to sign up and fight? Or y'all going to puss out and I'm going to win this whole thing by forfeit because I'm a man and y'all are little boys. Now it's like, fuck, we got to sign this thing.
True.
The following night, with pay-per-view cameras rolling, local fight fans trickle into Denver, Colorado's McNichols Sports Arena to witness the Ultimate Fighting Championship's first ever mixed martial arts tournament. No rules, except for the ones they signed off on. No judges' scores. No time limits. And unfortunately, no how-to manual for the video crew hired to capture the action for the pay-per-view audience watching at home. They had no idea what the fuck to do.
No, they didn't.
It's like, how do we shoot this thing? They had a camera looking down to capture the ground action. That's why a lot of times you see the camera overhead in UFC fights today.
Yeah.
They had to elevate the camera so they could get better shots due to the chain link fence. What I thought was interesting because a lot of people didn't know this. Some people knew something. In TNA, when they would do the 6 sides of steel, they had holes cut into the cage where you could stick the camera lens in. That's what they would do. They would cut holes in the side of the cage just big enough for a camera lens to go through. Now, some marks would break the fourth wall and try to do something with the hole in there. Nothing derogatory. They would just acknowledge that it's there, which you're not supposed to do. It's set up to where they have the camera lens in there so they can capture the action from ringside.
Yes.
Which was very smart. You notice not a lot of people did that. WWE and WCW put their guys physically inside the cage.
Yeah, that's true as well.
So now that means you had to be smart enough to know, hey, there's a cameraman there. Don't throw him into that side of the cage so we don't kill the cameraman.
Don't kill the cameraman.
They also avoided wide camera shots because there were only 3,000 people in the 18,000-seat arena. So the first UFC pay-per-view had only 3,000 people in the crowd. So you can't do wide shots because then you're going to show this is mostly an empty building and then it looks like crap on TV.
True.
Like, haha, you can't draw money. It's a shocking sight. 200-pound French Savate champion Gerard Gordeau facing off against Tyler Tula, a 420-pound sumo wrestler.
Oh, yeah, this scene right here.
This is the first match in the UFC history. And it sounds like the setup to a bad joke. Hey, Zach. Okay, a sumo wrestler and a French kickboxing champion walk into an 8-sided cage.
Okay.
The kickboxer says to the sumo guy, hey, have you ever had any dental problems?
Oh, jeez.
The guy says no. So he kicks him in the face. His tooth goes flying. He says, liar. Sometimes the tooth hurts. There's no punchline here. And the one I told was pretty bad. The sumo guy comes at him and he stumbles over and the French guy kicks him in the face and his teeth get knocked out. Then he hits him with a right hand and busts his eye. The match is stopped and Gerard is the winner.
Yep.
That's the first fight in the history of UFC. A sumo wrestler gets his tooth kicked out of his fucking head. And that kick was brutal. That's when you learn they ain't fucking around.
Nope.
Ken was excited because now he knew for sure this was a shoot. Because Ken was still questioning, well, is this a shoot? Is this a work? What am I doing here? And then he realized, oh, this is real shit. Sumo man tooth go fly.
Like out of the ballpark.
The second match is pitting kickboxer Kevin Rozier against karate champ Zane Frazier. It is also horrifically violent, but it's the final matches of the quarterfinals that introduces audiences to the UFC's future superstars. Royce Gracie and Ken Shamrock were tapping people out. They were dominating this fight. In the semifinals, Royce Gracie took on Ken Shamrock in his red Speedos, immediately appears to have the upper hand. But Gracie, wearing the white gi Shamrock found laughable at the press conference, proves he's no joke. Ken got choked out by the gi to the point where he taps. Mm-hmm. It's the opening bell of what would be a bitter rivalry between the two fighters.
Yes.
So imagine laughing at this guy. Look at this dumbass fucking gi wearing, and it ends up choking you out, and you're going...
Yeah, you tapped out. He wasn't happy about it at all. Like, this is bullshit.
Oh, no. He ain't happy about it. This is bullshit. You didn't choke me out. Your fucking gi did, you pussy. Gracie goes on to defeat Gerard in the finals to become the first UFC heavyweight champion. He's the first champion. Well, not heavyweight, but first champion.
Yeah, the first champion.
The first champion in the history of UFC is Royce Gracie.
First, respectably so, too.
And thus proving the dominance of his family's fighting style.
Yes.
But as the sparse crowd departs, Art Davie and his partner Bob Meyerowitz worry their creation hasn't connected with audiences. But then they hear the pay-per-view numbers. $14.95 was the price for the pay-per-view.
At that time frame, that makes sense.
Yeah, think about it. There was a time when a UFC pay-per-view was $15.
Less than 20.
Today it's what? Fucking $65, $70?
People wonder why they watch wrestling pay-per-views more than they watch UFC pay-per-views.
And they wound up doing more than 87,000 subscribers.
That's a lot.
So, do you know how much money total they made?
How much?
$1,300,650.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah, if you for 87,000 people at $14.95, that is $1,300,650.
Yes.
For your first show ever.
For sure.
4 months later, the UFC returns to Colorado.
Yes.
This time with twice as many fighters. The fresh roster contenders aren't the only new faces appearing in the dreaded Octagon. Rorian decides to bring in Big John McCarthy as the referee. Now, John McCarthy is a Los Angeles police officer who trains with the Gracies, but he's hesitant to accept the new job offer. But because he respected the Gracies in the sport, he agrees, and Art tells him he wants him to talk to the fighters and give a hand signal. John said these are two guys who want to beat the shit out of each other. All I'm going to do is say is, are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on! And Art says, perfect, do that. It becomes his signature. So that's it. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on. Now, of course, let's be clear. Let's Get It On was originated by Mills Lane. Mm-hmm. John McCarthy added, are you ready? Are you ready? That's the difference. But the original Let's Get It On, mm-hmm. Mills Lane. That was Mills Lane. Mm-hmm. Judge Mills Lane. Back when he used to ref boxing. Now, UFC 2 is an even bigger success than its predecessor, more than tripling UFC 1's pay-per-view subscribers. The event also multiplies the unfettered violence. The UFC's growing fan base may be thrilled by the bloodshed, but McCarthy is left shaken by the events. He was never allowed to stop the fight. Only tap-outs and the corner throwing in the towel could stop a fight. Now, McCarthy saw a fight between Scott Morris and Pat Smith, where Pat Smith nailed Scott with elbows till he's knocked out. The ref screams at the corner to throw the towel, and they said no and throw it into the crowd. So there's a corner with a fighter saying don't throw in the towel, and that same fighter can't tap out because he doesn't have that functionality in his brain. And that's true. Here's the thing, because even though as the corner man, you have to make the judgment on whether or not to throw in the towel.
Yeah, that's true.
But you also know that you have a fighter that is telling you before he goes out there, you don't stop this fight. It's kind of like in Rocky IV when Rocky's like, Apollo, you can't do no more. I got to stop this. He goes, you don't stop this fight. No matter what. No matter what. And that's why Rocky's sitting there. He wants to throw the towel and everybody's yelling at him, throw the damn towel. But he's afraid to because Apollo told him no. And Rocky knows if he throws in that towel, Apollo will never forgive him.
True.
That is the end of his friendship right there. So Rocky held back. Mm-hmm. And that's why you see him drop the towel after Drago hits that knockout punch that basically killed Apollo in the ring. Yeah. And Rocky carries that with him for years, all the way up to the Creed movies.
Yeah.
The fact that he never threw the towel in and hated himself for years because of it.
Yeah, that's true as well.
He regretted not throwing in that towel. He wishes he had. And it took him a long time to forgive himself for doing that. McCarthy finally goes to the organizers and says he can't just stand there and watch someone get beat to death. When a fighter cannot intelligently defend themselves, the referee has to be able to have the power to stop the fight. Organizers agree with McCarthy and institute the new rule. And that's where it becomes like what people say before about when guys come in and just go bam, 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 and the ref just stops. Mm-hmm. Which I get.
Yeah, I do too.
But sometimes from a certain angle, it's hard to tell if the person is just not silly, or if they just can't, or if you just give them a couple more minutes, they'll break free. It's hard to gauge that. But that's why certain fights end so fast.
Yes.
It's because of this new policy. Otherwise, they go on longer. Because they're saying, I need to be able to stop this fight. Because they're too stubborn to do it. Yep. So now, this is how you see the rules getting gradually added to UFC. Because certain things are forcing them to do it. As McCarthy said, if you don't institute this policy, I will not ref another fight. And they knew McCarthy was popular as a referee. So again, for business reasons, they're now adding it in. They're giving the ref the power to stop the fight.
Yes.
What UFC doesn't deliver is a rematch between its breakout stars. Ken Shamrock is out due to injury. And so Royce Gracie is crowned champion once again. He is now still UFC heavyweight champion. But organizers make the promise of a second cage match between the two fighters, the centerpiece of UFC 3. Despite the hype, the rematch doesn't go as planned. Shamrock is in fighting shape and is even allowed to wear his wrestling shoes. Now you're starting to see rules get implemented.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, if you're going to make him wear that fucking gi, I want to wear my goddamn shoes.
Yes.
And he puts the shoes on. But then the unthinkable. Gracie drops out midway through the tournament. He threw in the towel and said his body was exhausted. Ken thought he was being a chicken because he was also hurt and exhausted. Ken was so pissed off he dropped out of the tournament because he wanted Royce. His dad said, you're walking away from $60,000. And Ken said, I'm going home. So that ends up being the slap in the face at UFC. And I'm sorry, I'm going to say this right now. Royce Gracie is a pussy for dropping out. I'm going to say it. You're a pussy. You're in a tournament. You know going in, you have to win 3 fights to become the UFC heavyweight champion. You've done it twice already. You're telling me this go around, you don't want to fight? There's no other reason other than you're a pussy and you were scared to fight Ken Shamrock. Because you knew he was about to own your ass. And Ken just decides I'm going home. Now, I'm not going to say Ken's a pussy for dropping out. I am going to say he's stubborn. I'm like, dude, go win the 60 grand and then fight his ass.
There you go.
I mean, Ken, think about it. You don't exactly have, I don't know how much money you're getting paid in UFC. There's no way you're going to tell me you couldn't have used that 60 grand. You weren't exactly a millionaire yet. It pissed off the fans, but gave good publicity for the feud, and the following year it finally happens. It would be their bloodiest battle yet. But waiting in the wings is a man who threatens to put a chokehold on the UFC itself. And that man is none other than Senator John McCain.
Fuck you.
But more on that later. There's a saying in American newsrooms, if it bleeds, it leads. And yes, that is true.
That is very true.
And in the early 90s, bloody confrontations consumed television news. From the mayhem of the Gulf War to the breathless coverage of the Oklahoma City bombing, broadcasters seem intent on satisfying their viewers' fascination with extreme violence. It's against this backdrop that the Ultimate Fighting Championship emerges as must-see TV for bloodthirsty audiences. After 4 blood-soaked tournaments, organizers are lightening up the octagon for their most anticipated fight ever. A rematch between their 2 biggest stars, Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie. And now, this is where something else gets added to UFC that was never there before.
What was that?
It's called a super fight. A face-off between 2 fighters that exists outside of the evening's regular tournaments. Because usually the UFC was just the tournament and that's it. But now, people want to see these 2 fights so bad. It's like, you know what? We're going to put you guys in the tournament. Since you guys have proven that this fight is more important to you than the tournament, because Ken Shamrock walked out of the tournament, Royce Gracie pushed out of the tournament. So guess what we're going to do? They ain't gonna fight in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
You're just gonna fight each other. And the rest of them are gonna fight in the tournament, and you two are gonna settle your shit.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to keep the broadcast in the 2-hour pay-per-view window, a new rule is once again being added at the last minute. This match will have a 30-minute time limit. Because there were no time limits. Yeah. It went till whenever the fuck. But to keep this in the 2-hour time frame, this match will be 30 minutes long and that's it. Mm-hmm. You got 30 minutes to end this shit. Mm-hmm. Shamrock and Gracie are two of the UFC's toughest fighters, but neither of them can land a definitive blow to turn the fight in their favor. The fight lasted 31 minutes. McCarthy stopped it and gave them a minute to rest and then added a 5-minute overtime. Ken nails a shot and cuts Gracie's eye and takes him down. It looks like Shamrock is finally besting his longtime foe, which will make the grappler the first super fight champion in UFC history, but it isn't meant to be. The match ends in a draw. The crowd is booing because they felt Shamrock had won the fight. And I haven't seen the whole fight, but from what I saw in the clips, I think he did.
Yeah, I think so too.
So yeah, they kind of fucked them on that one. The Gracies, who were instrumental in creating the No Rules UFC, are equally upset after the super fight. Rorian said they can't fight with time limits. And they pull Royce out of the UFC, and the Gracies ultimately quit the UFC altogether. So yeah, we can't fight with time limits. I don't want time limits. So we're just gonna quit altogether. We're gonna go home. We're gonna go back to our home and play our Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Happy Wonderland. Where we can just suck, fucking fondle till we feel like we can't suck, fuck, or fondle no more. Fuck your 30 minutes. Or as we say in wrestling, the Gracies have to get their shit in.
They have to get their shit in.
As the Gracies exit the fighting league they helped found, in 1997, a Republican senator from Arizona enters the battlefield to destroy the UFC forever. He wrote letters to the governors and said, "Do not let this come to your state. This is human cockfighting." He even said he wouldn't allow animals to do this, so why would we let humans do this? We expect certain standards of behavior in our society, and this is clearly in gross violation of that. Okay. Now, let me just say something to everybody out there before I say what I'm about to say. Just in case anybody thinks I'm a Trumper who doesn't like John McCain, clarify this for y'all right now. Yes, I did vote for Trump. I don't regret it. But in 2008, I actually voted John McCain. I liked John McCain before the rest of y'all started kissing his ass. Okay? Before you all started automatically voting, how dare Trump make fun of John McCain for getting captured and being a war hero? I don't know, the same reason you guys did in 2008 when he ran? Literally everyone who has shat on Trump for what he said about McCain, y'all said worse shit about him. But because, again, he's no longer a threat to you, you can now be nice to him. So when McCain ran for president, all you guys did was shit on him. And by they, I mean the liberals.
Yeah.
You did nothing but shit on him. The View practically spat in his face when he appeared on their show. You all couldn't wait to disrespect this man.
True.
So don't sit here and act like I'm the asshole because I'm now about to. First of all, let me explain something. These are grown adults who all signed waivers to have this fight. This is nothing like cockfighting or dogfighting, and I'm going to tell you why. Because usually in cockfighting and dogfighting, the cocks and the dogs don't have a choice. They're bred to fight. They go to fight. They got an owner who is training them in some bizarre, crazy way to get them in there and fight. These humans are fighting on their own free will. So it's nothing like that. Also, I'm going to say another thing y'all ain't going to like. I'm not against cockfighting. I'm not even against dog fighting. If you want dogs to fight each other, be my guest. Because here's the thing. The problem with Michael Vick was not that he had dogs fighting. It was the fact that he was killing them. And he was killing them in inhumane ways. That's what made Michael Vick a scumbag. Not the fact that he had dogs. I don't care. This dog has this dog. Place your fucking bets. I don't care. You know why I don't care? Because first of all, I like dogs, but I'm not that fucking obsessed. Like you all are. And two, if you want to make dogs and humans on the same pedestal, let them fight. Y'all same ones that say dogs are just as important as people and there are our non-human brethren and When I have a dog and he's basically my child. Fuck you. Fuck you. Seriously. Having a dog is nothing like having a child. Not even fucking close. So, I say, let them fight. Just don't kill them. Now, if the dog kills the other dog, that just happens. That's life. But, as a human, don't kill the dog. That's what makes you the scumbag. But either way, I don't give a fuck. And again, we expect certain standards of behavior in our society. Really, like what? Don't fight each other? We don't. Unless two people really want to fight each other. Okay? Most of the time, we walk down the street, we hold hands, we want to sing Kumbaya and live in harmony. But sometimes, motherfuckers want to fuck with you. Mm-hmm. And I want to give peace a chance, but first I gotta kill this motherfucker who's disturbing my goddamn peace.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the biggest bitch rant of 2022, even though 2023, Vinny the Bitch Boochie. Yay!
Thank you.
Now, do you have anything to say positive to the world?
Thank you to all that voted for me. I love you all. Look, I've already said it before and I'll say it again. If you're a member of the Boochcast Nation, you know I love you. Mm-hmm. You're watching this video and you're giving likes and comments. I love you.
I love you too. I love you too.
Especially if the comments are positive. Mm-hmm. If they're negative, we'll try to respond in a diplomatic way, unless you're a dick.
Yeah, and if you don't like us, we got 2 words for you. Fuck you.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you to suck it. The problem is it might feel good and I might like it, so I don't even want you to do that. During a debate between Bob Meyerowitz and John McCain on CNN, Bob says that nobody has been seriously injured during the tournaments. Now, he didn't say hurt, he just said seriously injured.
Seriously injured where they're like in a wheelchair. The dude got his face knocked out. He was
he got a tooth knocked out, but that's not like a chronic injury that's going to affect him the rest of his life.
Yeah, if I was a ref and I saw a UFC guy see a guy getting the shit out of it, I was like, okay, you win.
Yeah.
You won. Back up.
Yeah, they mean, there's a difference between being hurt and being injured. Yeah. Injured's like, no one's had a broken arm, no one's gotten a broken leg, no one's suffered a broken neck, nobody's paralyzed.
The UFC guy, oh crap, if I don't tap out, my arm might get broke. Okay, you win.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and all John has to say is, 36 states have already outlawed it and won't be long before all 50 do. Mm. So John's basically ignoring all the stats that are being thrown at him and just saying, it's barbaric, we got 36 people. Now, the 36 states that have outlawed it are basically North Carolina, Mississippi, well, nobody wants to go there anyway, and many others. So, what you're saying is, North Carolina, the home of pro wrestling, and Mississippi, which is basically a giant patch of racist dirt, and many others. Do anybody really hold events in Mississippi anymore? The type of place where you can be at a gas station and somebody runs up to you and goes, "What news do you have from the North?"
The guy still lost the war. Get over it.
The UFC finds itself fighting a battle for survival. Yeah. And Art Davie can't see a path to victory for the brutal sport he helped create. Mm-hmm. After the UFC's 5th tournament, Davie decides to sell his share to his co-founder, Sephomore CEO Bob Meyerowitz. But first, Davie needs to convince his partner, Rorian Gracie. Gracie is hesitant, but Davie says it's the right thing. Bob makes them a 7-figure offer, and they say yes. But then Bob realizes he doesn't know how to put the matches together, so he hires Davie to be the UFC commissioner so he can be the booker and matchmaker. Mm-hmm. That's kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. So Art Davie goes from owning the company to now being an employee. Mm-hmm. But
he has a 7-figure in his pocket, so...
He's got... And here's the thing. Not only that, technically, I don't know if this is the case, but I think it should be. He's got the money from the sale, mm-hmm. but technically he also gets a salary for working for the company.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not like he only got the 7 figures, he's working for free.
Yeah, true.
He's getting some type of commissioner-style money.
Yeah.
Now, just an employee of the organization he helped create, Dave sees his worst fears realized. He was trying to get out because he realized this is not going to go well for the UFC.
No, it's not.
He honestly felt like this company's going to go under.
Yes.
Because John McCain's going to stop this shit at all fucking costs. By the late 90s, the UFC is more often making news for its battles outside of the company's famous octagon. The owner is in a constant state of damage control as he's forced to find ways to appease state regulators. Ken saw it as a bunch of crap that got in the way of him doing his job. All they want to do is their job.
Yeah.
That's it. You don't give a shit about nothing else.
True.
They don't want to be involved in all this crap. I just want to fight.
Yeah, and this is the part where he was drinking a lot, doing drugs. And people want to... If I saw Ken Shamrock in a bar, I'm not going to go up and say, like... The most are like, dude, can I buy you a drink? I don't want to fight you because I know I'll get my ass kicked. People want to fuck with the dude. I was like, yeah, you're a fucking idiot. It's like, yeah, you go fight. It was like, what's going to happen? He's like, Ken Shamrock, today's world is 60 years old. That dude is still physically fit. It can beat the living shit out of you.
Yes, and Ken Shamrock is the UFC's highest paid fighter. He is the #1 guy in the UFC.
Yes.
But as he struggles to maintain his spot at the top of the UFC's roster of fighters, he also finds ways to deal with his stress. He did drugs to kill the pain, unwind, and not think about anything. This is where he starts getting into the drugs. The fighters would go out to the club afterwards, and because Ken was famous and alcohol makes people brave, they would try to fight him, as Zack said. One guy hit him with a bat, and he hit him in the temple and blinded him. He once put a dude in a coma by shoving his cheekbone into his brain. He had $300,000 in lawsuits, paying attorneys to defend him. Because these guys are trying, again, you're trying to try Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
It's like, even in wrestling, they try to do that shit.
Okay, yeah, go fuck with somebody who's the size of Brock Lesnar or The Rock. So goes like, don't do it.
Okay, you know how many times Gator has sent me text messages of him having bloody knuckles after knocking somebody out because they tried to say wrestling's fake, so I bet I can whoop your ass. And he's like, he'll literally go, I'll eat your fucking eyeball, motherfucker.
Make sure you put salt and pepper on.
Yeah. You know what he did? He ate his fucking eyeball and then he skull fucked him.
I'll rip out your eyes and skull fuck you.
He killed that. He practically killed that fucking guy. He then decided to stop going to clubs and just drink and do drugs at his house. He's like, I'm tired of dealing with drama. I'm tired of dealing with people. I'm just going to sit home at my nice house and chug.
I do the chug park at my house. Like a responsible person. Don't say a word. But here's the thing, folks. If you go out, you know you're a drinker like me, don't go to bars because it's too fucking suspicious. Buy the alcohol and go sit on your porch like a responsible adult like me. Okay? When's the last time we've been to a bar?
It's been a long time since you and I have been to a bar.
Well, we don't go to bars.
We don't really. I mean, I very seldom go at all.
Yeah. I
think the last time I went to a bar was when Maria came to town. And we went to Mazzy's because Steven was in a dart tournament, and him and Andrea, who have gotten back together, they were going to the tournament. She goes there to support him, so Maria and I sat down with her. And that's a story I'm going to save for a variety show. I don't want to go into detail about it here, but let's just say it was interesting. That's how long it's been since we've been to bars. We don't really go out to bars much anymore.
No. I think we did that plenty of times several years ago.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I used to be rowdy, but I never got kicked out of a bar. Like, okay, Zach, let's go. Time to go home.
Yeah. Well, let's rephrase that. The owners never kicked you out of the bar. We kicked you out of the goddamn bar. We picked your ass up and said, we're getting the fuck out of here before you get us arrested. The UFC has a run-in of its own, this time with lawmakers in New York State who threaten to deliver a death blow to the organization. They start making rule changes that aren't realistic, like widening the 32-foot octagon to a minimum of 40 feet in diameter. There's no time to rebuild, and floor seats around the stage are already sold out. The UFC files a $32 million lawsuit against the lawmakers. Judge rules in favor of the state, and the appeal is thrown out. And after all the work to create the league, the broken bones, the blood on the canvas, it looks like the final bell is being rung for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Everyone involved became a family and agreed the show must go on.
The show must go on.
Now, obviously, they're doing this on purpose to try to arrange so they can't have the show. And that should be against the law. You can't put rules in place that cannot realistically be met. That should be unconstitutional to me. That is unconstitutional on so many levels. Like they said, they don't have time to rebuild their octagon, and the floor seats are already sold out. And I want to say this to New York State or any state. When people buy tickets to a show, it generates revenue for the state or town you're in.
True.
It helps with the economy. So even if you don't like the UFC, if the show is sold out, why would you shut it down?
True.
You're fucking over the people in your town or state. You're fucking with the money in your state. That's money that needs to be refunded, that the state could have made. At least run the show. Or put rules in place that are realistic. And let them compromise. Instead, you just tried to shut the thing down because you're petty motherfuckers.
Petty.
Who apparently don't want to make money in New York.
Apparently not.
And obviously, ladies and gentlemen, this is not the last of the UFC.
Nope.
But we do have to wrap this up.
Yep.
Right here. So, once again, Zach, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. And make sure you guys tune in next week. Because next week, we get to part 2 of the UFC. So we're going to talk more about the UFC next week as we get to UFC part 2, to live or die in the octagon.
Very true.
So we're going to get to that next week here on Boochcast Views Darkside of the 90s. So make sure you guys follow us on all of our podcast platforms. The link is down in the description box below. Follow us on all our social media platforms. Link is down in the description box below. Support the Boochcast. Go to anchor.fm/the Boochcast/support. The link is down in the description box below. And as always, hit the subscribe button and ring that bell to be notified so you never miss another episode of Boochcast Reviews Dark Side of the 90s, as well as other additional Boochcast YouTube content. We'll talk to you guys next time. Until then, pizza, baby!